public employment services. This is a webinar on the topic of skills and labour market intelligence, and considering in particular the role of public employment services in that context. Hamad, I'd like to thank you for your practical information to participants that joined early. For those that are still joining now, in a moment I will go through revise some of those practical details and how you can join in. But you also invited me to give you a warm welcome, and I just wanted to say to everyone that I hope everyone is coping okay with this heat that we're experiencing across Europe. I hope everyone is well and hydrating properly, probably dreaming of summer holidays already, some people. But it's great to see the interest and to see so many of you joining us this morning. 128 at the moment. I'm counting people joining this morning's webinar. So it shows the interest in this important topic for the network and the stakeholders of the network. So without further ado, and before I revise, as I say, the agenda and the practical details, I'd like to hand the floor straight away to the representative of the PES Network Secretariat within DG Employment, Isabelle Rest. Isabelle, could you invite you to take the floor and give us some opening words? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Good morning, everybody. I am Isabelle Rest. I am a policy officer at the PES Network Secretariat. I'm delighted to welcome you today at our webinar on skills and labour market intelligence. I'm glad to see many of you people from different horizons, many from PES, of course, but also from other organizations. For those of you who are less familiar with the PES network, it was created in 2014. It brings together the public employment services. Please, can you? Okay. It's fine. It brings together the public employment services. Can you please get the mic, please? It brings together the public employment services of the 20 EU member states, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. Our aim at the PES network is to strengthen cooperation between public employment services to improve the services they deliver to their customers. We have a pretty busy work program with over 40 activities a year. I invite you to have a look at our knowledge center if you want to find out more. Colleagues from ICF, I think we will put the link in the chat. Thank you. I would like to recall that the contents of this presentation are based on a thematic review workshop by the Greek PES, hosted by the Greek PES DIPA, which we organized with over 20 PES in October last year, as well as with our expert, Ben Krischel, and the CDFOP. This workshop was part of our 2024 work program. As you are aware, the topic of skills remain a key concern for the Commission. It is a crucial factor in the EU's competitiveness. In the context of the Union of Skills initiative adopted on 5th March, skills intelligence is, of course, a strategic priority as it enables us to better understand the evolving labour market and equip workers with the skills needed to navigate their entire professional careers. PES are both producers but also consumers of labour market skills intelligence, using various forms of data to match job seekers' profiles with job vacancies and inform training and policies decision. I'm taking this opportunity to inform you about the recent publications of the PES network related to skills. A thematic report on PES support of career guidance, skills assessment, and individual learning accounts has been published in April this year. You will find in this report a state of play of ILS projects in European countries and the role PES plays or are willing to play to support ILS. We also published a thematic paper called Early Intervention and Job-to-Job Transition, the Evolving Role of PES. This paper outlines the innovative role that PES are playing, providing preventative services and upskilling programs for employees at risk of job losses. and eventually the thematic paper on skills and labor market intelligence that we are going to present today. Very soon, we will also publish a toolkit on green skills and jobs. Please note that all these publications are easily accessible in the PES Knowledge Center on the European Commission website. I think I've said enough. I will now hand over to Ed. Thank you very much, and I hope we have a successful webinar today.
Thank you very much indeed, Isabel, for those opening words and for helping to set the scene for this morning's webinar. So for the rest of the session, we have slightly less now than an hour and a half ahead of us. You'll be in the hands of myself. My name's Ed Thorpe, as moderator, together with Eamon Daven, a PES Network expert, and we'll be working in tandem to guide us through the content that we're going to address in this morning's webinar. So let's start by having a quick look at the objectives for this session. So Isabel mentioned this thematic paper, the thematic paper on skills and labour market intelligence, and we're delighted that the lead author of that report, Ben Krischel, is here with us to share with us some of the content of that report, and in that context to highlight the European Skills, Competences, Qualifications and Occupations Classification System, commonly known as the ESCO classification system, and how that its usefulness essentially for PES and other stakeholders that are joining this morning's webinar. We always think in terms of PES and also stakeholders in the broader ecosystem. We also then want to be looking at practical examples, take inspiration from PES. This is for people that have taken part in PES Network webinars in the past. You'll know this is an important feature of what we're trying to do. We're trying to share the contents of maybe a thematic detailed report and then practical inspiration and examples from the ground. And we're delighted that we'll be joined by representatives of the public employment services in both Greece and Sweden this morning to share some of what they are doing on the ground on this topic, to provide inspiration. And then again, we often like to open it up and look perhaps beyond the members of the network to some of the key partners that we work with. And one of those key partners is CEDEFOP, the European Centre for the Development of Vocational Training. And so we'll be hearing as well some insights on their work regarding skills intelligence and skills forecasting. I'll go through exactly the structure of how we're going to go through each of those topics. But let's have a look at how you can get involved in these discussions. If you joined early, you'll have heard Hamad explain that we are going to use Slido to ask questions. So if you want to use the chat feature here on Teams, you can use that to say hello to each other, to ask practical questions, maybe if you're struggling to access something. But in terms of questions to our speakers, please use Slido. And we will, in a moment, launch a first poll just so that we can all get onto Slido and make sure that we can access it okay. So before the first presentation, we'll do that and give everyone an opportunity to join the Slido room using the hashtag PES or the QR code provided. So now let's have a look at the agenda. If we can get that onto screen. It's quite straightforward. It follows the structure that I presented. We will start with a presentation from Dr. Krischel on the report, and we will take a moment after his presentation to take some of the questions that you want to ask. So, and this will be a common feature throughout the webinar. Whilst people are presenting, if you've got a question that you would like to direct to that specific speaker, please start putting them into the Q&A box within Slido during the presentation. Because at the end of the presentation, we will go straight. I'll hand over to Eamon and he'll pick out some of the key questions. If you see a question that someone else has asked that you would really like to see answered, please do upvote it, give it a thumbs up, and it will raise it up the list, and we'll try to take those in priority. So we'll start with this overview from the report, the thematic report that's been published by the PES Network. Then we'll dive into each of the practical examples from, as I said, representatives of the PES in Greece and Sweden. And again, each time we'll take a separate question and answer for each participant. So we'll clean the question and answer box after each after each round, so that we can see which questions are directed at which speaker. And last but by no means least, we'll give the floor to the final presentation to the representative of CEDAFOP, and I'll introduce each of the speakers in due course as we go through the agenda. And again, there'll be a final round of questions to the representative of CEDAFOP. So I promised that we would start with a quick poll to get us going, to get used to Slido. So if we can, so here is the QR code. If you prefer to use QR codes, please take out your phone, scan that. If you are not someone that likes to use a QR code, you can just go directly to slido.com. And when it asks you which room you'd like to go into, just type PES into the box there, and you'll be able to access the room in exactly the same way. And if we can launch already the first question. The question is around what type of skills anticipation your PES is involved in. And there's options there in terms of maybe your PES is not involved yet in skills forecasting. Maybe you're focusing on short, medium, or long-term skills anticipation. And we'll just give a moment for people to continue joining. We'll leave the QR code is there still on the left of the screen if you still want to join. And after the second question, I'll invite Eamon to give us some reflections on what he's seeing in these questions. Okay, we've had for 52 joining. Okay, so I don't want to take too long. I think a picture is starting to emerge, so I'll ask Eamon to comment on that in a moment. But if we can perhaps already move on to the second question. So in that context, what tools does your PES use in labour market and skills information in this context? There's a range of options there for you to choose from. Survey-based anticipation, employment forecasts, skills forecasts, big data applications maybe, a more qualitative approach to foresighting, or maybe something else. And then Eamon, maybe as people are still maybe answering, I'll let you comment perhaps on what you saw from the first question and also the second question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed, and good morning, colleagues. I think, first of all, perhaps slightly surprising that there's still quite a lot of organisations not involved in skills forecasting, possibly because at the moment the kind of process is not actually available in order to do that. Particularly at the moment, again, I think from the first poll, rather a focus on the short term. That may be a reflection of the fact that the world is incredibly uncertain at the moment, and perhaps people think that they need to really be thinking about the short term rather than investing a lot in some longer term kind of projections. Or maybe it's a view that at the moment they are still developing the capacity for the more intensive medium and long term skills horizon scanning. In terms of the second poll, I think it's perhaps not surprising that a variety of tools are in use. Traditionally, of course, we didn't really have any clear processes for actually assessing skills. We used occupational classifications and educational standards as a kind of proxy. With the development of technology, particularly the inception of AI, we now have the ability to develop some quite advanced skills taxonomies, but they do indeed need a variety of sources for those to have a rich enough source of data to be useful for us. I'd be particularly fascinated to know, perhaps in the chat box, if anybody could perhaps share what something else means with us, because I think the paper, as we've discussed, was excellent, and I wonder what any PES or stakeholders are doing in addition to the other methods. And of course, perhaps survey-based anticipation is something we've been doing for longest, and maybe it's not surprising that that's still the most common usage. But I think in order to get an overall picture, it's increasingly used in a combination with other module processes, particularly big data and quantitative and qualitative forecasting, both of which are essential to develop really kind of fit for purpose taxonomies. Thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you, Eamon. And yeah, please feel free to use the chat here to make comments, to share if you're using other tools, and we'll keep the Q&A on Slido for the questions to our speakers. But do share any observations or comments in the chat box here, and maybe Eamon, if you notice anything, you can pick up on it later on. Okay, so it's 10:15 Central European time, so we're right on time to hand over to our first speaker. Ben Kriechel is an expert in labour market research and research methodology, specialising in personnel and labour economics and education economics. And perhaps more importantly, in the context of this morning's webinar, he's the lead author of the PES Network thematic report on skills and labour market intelligence. That report is available on the Knowledge Centre that Isabel mentioned earlier, but maybe many people haven't had the chance to read that report yet. So we're delighted, Ben, that you've joined us this morning. I'll hand over to you for the next 15 minutes to give us an overview of the key messages you want to share with participants this morning. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Ed. Thanks to all who are present here. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. At next slide we can use so that I show what I wanted to do. In this presentation, I would want to touch upon a couple of points from the thematic paper, stress certain elements which I find important, and I take the basic proposal that I think a PES needs robust labor market and skills intelligence, I mean, you can challenge that premise if you want. Happy to discuss it. It also reflects my bias. Of course, I'm a quantitative, so empirical economist by training, and therefore I like to work with data. This should not diminish any of the qualitative ways that the work is done. So I do appreciate and I do need the different types of information that comes together. Today, I talk a little bit more about the quantitative part and what my thinking about it is. In my view, in my limited view, because I'm not working at a PES, I've never really worked at one of those, is that the PES's goal is to some degree match labor supply and demand through informed policies, through skills informed policies. I added to match the theme today. And there are different ways in which it is done. I mean, you can have it direct sort of referral because you know certain demand and you know job seekers. It can also be by preparing people better for the future demand by giving them training or by supporting them in their choice of the qualification they want to follow or the career they want to follow. So all of this is often in the package of a PES counselor. And my goal is today to think along with you in how labor market information, skills intelligence could help you to do that. Many of the aspects that we are talking about are forward-looking. If you're thinking about training, if you're thinking about a career choice, if you're thinking about qualifications that you want to take up, you would like to know what the future is like. Unfortunately, we can't really look into the future. But the tools that we are discussing sometimes try to at least have a notion of the direction of which skills might be needed in the future. Next slide, please. So labor market and skills information or intelligence collects, in my view, the different types of data, different types of tools and sources to help you derive or interpret key outcomes and indicators. It's ideally a one-stop place where people know, or a place people know to find, and even better, know how to use it. And that is probably more of a challenge than finding the place where this information is available in your country if you have such a one-stop solution. Labor market and skills information should provide you a tool to do further analysis, do your own thinking and decision making on the various tasks that you might have within the PES or outside of the PES. So I believe in this informed decision making, trying to get as much different types of information together and making sense of them. The labor market and skills intelligence is there to inform the PES experts. So PES experts, I consider those people that interpret the developments on the labor market, on the qualification and skills markets, the PES counselors who actually interact with job seekers and firms, but they're also important for employer engagement, addressing future potential skill challenges or mismatches, future shortages, but it also informs, of course, the job seeker. All of these have different information needs, and we will come back also to the way that we might want to address that. Now, ESCO comes into play here in bringing skills towards the forward-looking labor market information. Traditionally, the longer forward-looking models were skill forecasts. And even though they were always called skill forecasts, there were not many skills in there. There were basically occupations in there. So ESCO could play a role in bringing back or bringing skills into this question. Next slide, please. Now, for those of you that have never heard of ESCO, ESCO is in essence a classification tool, a classification set of skills, competences, qualifications, and occupations. It's developed EU-wide, and it is there to provide a standardized way of classifying these issues and allow a comparison across countries. So ideally, this simplifies let me call it the language of interaction also across borders, because that is one of the challenges within our 27 member states, of course, that everybody speaks a different language. We still have very different qualification systems, and a common classification can help us to try to seek a common language. It will not overcome all of these problems, but it will help us to move towards it. In the terms of, or in the context of labor market and skills intelligence, we can use the ESCO classification to add certain skills elements to outcomes, to forecasts, if we match them, for example, at the occupation level, or potentially you could also match them at the qualification level, and then try to identify certain key skills that you're interested in. You will see a presentation by the Greek colleagues who for sure have done an element of that. Next slide, please. Data sources for LMSI. I put first the labor market forecast, that's where I come from, but we also do surveys, for example, on employer skill needs, future job openings, sometimes also surveys among PES about the expectations for economic development, occupational labor markets, and so forth. What I call real-time data, some people rather call big data nowadays. So it is also real-time to some degree only, because online job ads, while they appear real-time, the processing usually takes a couple of weeks before you have all the information out of that one. And the same is true for administrative records, even though all of us have to provide certain administrative records at the right time. The processing of the administrative records and the timing by which all of them are complete usually takes a quarter or two in a year, so that it is near real-time data would probably be the better thing. All of these data sources can be connected by certain analysis that feeds into the LMSI. I'm not going into the details. Please refer to the report there. But the challenge here is also to find sort of a common outcome to gear it towards things like occupations, skills, indicators that help the user to understand what all this means, because they don't want to work with the data directly. Next slide, please. ESCO, I would propose, and it has been used by some of you, probably more than I know of, to map occupations to required skills, both in terms of qualifications, but also in terms of skills itself, and to bring a little bit more depth to the question of what are people actually doing if we are asking for a specific occupation. In labor market and skills information, you will always have the trade-off that people want more detail, but we cannot have more detail than we have information. So that will always be a challenge. Think about creative solutions. Please contribute your solutions toward the system, because we need to learn from each other. ESCO can provide another level of granularity, sector-specific granularity on skills, by adding those two different ways that we do skills anticipation. In essence, you link ESCO towards whatever outcome you have in your skills anticipation tool, and to try to aggregate it back into the elements that you find interesting. Let's say a certain type of skills or a certain set of skills. An example are green and digital skills, which we have several studies by now which try to identify key skills there and try to work towards outcomes at the sector level or at the occupation level to show which skills are developing, which skills are in shortage, and so forth. So the invitation is to work along those lines, tell your story, and help us make both the classification of ESCO better, but also the system, the methodology to embed it. Next slide, please. In terms of usability of these results, I mentioned already the level of detail. If you want to take decisions, you want a very clear level of detail. You want it as detailed as possible. It's not enough that you need engineers. You want to know which type of engineers, whether it's an electrical engineer or a machine building engineer, ideally even with the specific specialization within this qualification. Former tools, old tools cannot provide that. New tools are trying to add this granularity to it. ESCO is one element. Ovate, for example, from CDFOP will be introduced later, also tries to introduce elements that a certain occupation might need currently in a specific labor market. Level of detail is also overwhelming, so some users will not be able to understand all of this if you always throw all levels of detail at them. Classifications are always useful to combine the data sources, but also to allow to get a better overview, to aggregate and to generalize certain decision makings that you make, for example, in training processes or qualification processes. The ease of use of the outcomes of a labor market and skills intelligence depends both on the types of users that you have, but also on the way that you think ahead about the main usages of any of the labor market and skills information that you are providing. Finally, a word of warning: interpretation of results. Not everybody can directly work with labor market and skills information. I always emphasize that people should build up a certain history in working with the data and learning how the different tools work in order to make good outcomes, make good interpretations of the results. It is not as straightforward as telling you exactly how many number of people you need and which skills exactly you will need for the future. We cannot look into the future. You have to understand your models. In general, we have a trade-off between the complexity, the level of detail, and the usability. Next slide, please. Can I have the next? Yeah, thanks. And I would invite you also to show your ways in which you try to address the different groups that you have. Here's my little nod to the Dutch, where I learned skills forecasting. This is from the ROA, Research Center of the Labor Market and Education. They have been doing labor market forecasts for 25 years, I think, by now. And this is a representation of an outcome in which they accumulate the outcomes that they have for more than 100 occupations and qualifications into occupational groups. They color code where there are a lot of problems within a group of the specific occupation that is mentioned. And by using the pictograms, you have an idea in which direction you are heading. This is, for me, an example of where somebody tries to use diagrams very efficiently. Next slide, please. And let's skip to the challenges. Another slide further. Thank you. To start the conclusions, I want to mention the challenges. LMSI is addressing different types of users, and we have to think about its usability for these users and develop them carefully. You can also develop them slowly if you're building up your LMSI project, that you first address one group, then the other group, and then a third group. But do think about these different use cases and don't get stuck in your first use case, let's say, of the experts, because then you're missing out on a lot of uses that LMSI could provide. I also want to emphasize the stakeholder involvement. Get the feedback on the indicators, on the results that you draw from the LMSI in order to get a reality check. How can it be interpreted? Is that something that sectors understand and would also support in terms of an interpretation? This is especially important early on, but it's very healthy to do this on a regular basis. I would also emphasize to invest in the PES staff to use the tool in terms of interpretation and in the daily work. Where is it useful? Where is it not useful? It is not as straightforward as the developers usually think, and it's a reality check to see how people are using it within the PES who are already to some degree experts. And my invitation to experiment, use the different tools, combine them, tell us about it. Final slide, please.
Just before, Ben, you share your conclusions, just a reminder and perhaps an invitation also to participants to do ask your questions to Ben using the Q&A feature on Slido. So if you're in Slido, you might be in the polls, but you can see just next to the polls, there's the question and answer feature, and you can go in there. I don't see any questions asked yet, but after your conclusion, I'll hand over to Eamon, who will have a conversation with you in any case. But please, participants, do share your questions for Ben in Slido. Thank you.
Thanks. So to conclude, I wanted to stress that the labor market and skills intelligence are good tools for observing labor markets. It's a good tool to prime reactions towards developments on the labor markets, both that are currently happening, but also that are happening or anticipated in the future. And I would strongly recommend for all countries to develop their own tools based on whatever is already available and thinking about tools they want to add in the future. Again, I want to stress how important it is that persons that are interacting with LMSI build up the experience, that they have to understand which instrument to use for which task, and that they also do understand which models, which tools might not give you the best answer or might give you strange answers that you might also want to question. A forecast might lead you into the wrong direction. So experienced forecasters usually also try to understand how a forecast is changing over time. So from one forecasting cohort, so to speak, to the next one, is there certain stability in there, or are these just glitches of the model to some degree, because they also do exist? Then I think that any future-ready PES should include and develop LMSI, should also think about use cases for it, and try to anticipate the different form of users within their organization in order to make best use of it. I would want to strengthen the forward-looking sort of outcomes or forward-looking thinking, because many times that a PES is involved, it involves itself into a future career of a person, a job seeker, and it has the chance to push a person towards a good path, and that helps both the economy and the social system, but it also helps the person that is sitting in front of you. Finally, to facilitate cross-border comparability, I want to emphasize once more the ESCO-based classification as a tool to include skills into the various elements of labor market and skills intelligence. Please do play around with it, think about it. Sometimes some national countries have also very strong national classifications that can be an advantage and a disadvantage. I would also encourage them to think about, if they want still use a national classification, to think about good ways to transform any elements they have nationally also towards ESCO and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ben. Without further ado, Eamon, can I hand over to you? We have about 5 minutes for questions. There's some questions now in the chat. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ben, for a very rich and informative presentation. Two questions, I think. Perhaps if I could pose them both to you, you could take them in turn if you could. I think these are two very, very excellent practical questions arising from your presentation, actually. One colleague has asked, how do we account for the phenomenon of ghost jobs when we're estimating skills? Often people talk about online job ads that aren't necessarily legitimate. I mean, if there are significant kind of volume of those type of job advertisements, is that something that we can actually take into account when we're developing these systems? And the second question, I think one of your final points was absolutely fundamental. We have lots of data, but unless the data can be easily understood by people who aren't experts, sometimes employers, public employment service staff, and indeed job seekers, how do we reconcile that kind of tension between having a rich source of data, but information that's easily understandable by the key users? So ghost job ads and usability of data. Have you got any thoughts on those two subjects, please? Thank you.
Yes, so I'll start with the ghost ads, or the question if companies, and this is quite specific actually to online job advertisements or job advertisements in general. If companies post a job advertisement, they usually, or they very often post them at various sites, and therefore it might appear that there are multiple openings by the same company. It can become even more complicated. Companies often search by themselves. They search through some consultants that match them with job seekers. And they might also have job openings where they test the market, so to speak. So all of these I just now call ghost advertisements. And online job OJA experts might know much more how to do this practically, but they are trying first to eliminate a lot of these double counts within the system to not overcount the number of vacancies. In the process of using the tool of online job vacancies, where this is most predominant, I think many experts would agree that you combine the estimation on how many job openings you think you will have now or in the near future with also the outcomes you have from the online job vacancies, and you enrich the information that you believe more from the online job vacancies. So what kind of information is in the background of what is needed, what kind of skills are needed, then that you simply count how many online job vacancies are there. So if you can't clean it up, you just don't trust the entire number, so to speak. You adjust it by a certain factor that you, out of your experience or out of comparison to other instruments, you make. That's sort of the short answer at the end. The second question was about usability and how you make graphs of figures that are informative. Again, it's important that you know your target group. You need to simplify the information toward that target group. And very often the simplification is already necessary at a very early level. So whereas the person that runs, for example, a forecast knows exactly the number that comes out of it, there's I would suggest a tendency to not show exact numbered outcomes in a skills forecast because it's not very informative. It's very much dependent on a lot of assumptions that are in there. And you sort of summarize that into strongly growing, intermediately growing, or declining occupations as one example. And that's also what you saw in the example from the Netherlands, where they translated it into an indicator of shortages or non-shortages.
Thank you very much. I think just looking at the time, perhaps one time for one very final and I think very, again, key question, Ben. What would your view be about a realistic definition of the longest term horizon that it's useful to consider, given the technology and the sort of volatility of the labour market? So would you have a view for those who are looking at long-term forecasting, how far into the future, in your expert opinion, it's worthwhile without getting into unhelpful speculation? So thank you.
Yes, so I don't take on the Asimov suggestion of, I think it was 1,000 years. I've done forecasts to 10 years that I felt comfortable with for the tool that we developed. I think I've done also 15 years in the future, knowing that it's not the 15 years that we're interested in or the detail. It depends on how you use the tool. So in general, the longer the time horizon is, the less likely it is that the outcome is true. But even for shorter time horizons, you don't make the forecast to be entirely correct. You make the forecast in order to see certain developments that are currently occurring, given some assumptions that you think are true for the future in order to make quantitatively informed decision for the future. And all forecasters can tell you the stories about just finishing a forecast and then COVID hits, or then Russia invades Ukraine, or whatever happens, that sort of questions several key assumptions. So that's quite normal.
Thank you. A very wise summary there. Thank you very much, Ben. Trying to predict the unpredictable is always going to be difficult. So thank you very much. I think I can hand back to Ed now to introduce our next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eamon, and thanks very much, Ben, both for your presentation and for the answers you provided to some of the questions from our participants in the Slido Q&A. Without further ado, we want to move on now to some of the inspirational examples we said that we were going to hear from public employment services across Europe. I noticed in the initial poll question that people said that only about a third of PES were using medium-term skills anticipation. So we're now going to hear an example about how the Greek PES is using medium-term skills forecasting and labour market intelligence. I understand we're going to have a presentation in two parts. First of all, Yannis Papadimitrou, who is the head of the Department of International Relations at the Directorate of Strategic Planning of the Greek Public Employment Service, DYPA, will give us a presentation. And then following that, Dr. Vaios Kotsios, who has led large-scale business intelligence projects with Greek's PES and other organisations for over 10 years, I think will give us perhaps a more practical demonstration of the tool that you've been using. But Yannis, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ed. First of all, I'd like to thank Ben for his wonderful presentation, and I'd like to confirm that what he identified as challenges in LMSI usage have been actually ascertained in the Greek example as well. And of course, I'm referring to usability and tailoring LMSI to the needs of the end users. Okay, so LMSI in the Greek PES. Next slide, please. So as you can see in the title, the Greek PES, and generally at the national level, we are trying to use LMSI to move towards better employment services. Of course, the whole process is still underway. It's still developing. And next slide, please. So I should begin by saying that the Greek PES, DIPA, the Greek PES itself does not have its own, in-house tool. Instead, it collaborates with and participates in and utilizes the skills analysis tool of the mechanism of labor market diagnosis, which is actually owned and operated. It's run by the MECI unit, the unit of experts in employment, social insurance, welfare, and social affairs of the Greek Labor Ministry and Social Security. So it uses its tool primarily to support its counselors in their counseling and matching work, to enhance support services for job seekers and employers, to inform the design of its ALMPs, and very importantly, to align vocational education and training with labor market needs, notably through informing the curricula of its own vocational education and training units. Just a quick overview of the mechanism is that the mechanism has developed, to put it in a nutshell, a skills analysis tool that integrates data from administrative sources, for example, the unemployment registry of the PES, the Ergani platform, which registers the different employment flows, creation and destruction of jobs and so on, but also those of the Hellenic Statistical Authority, and mainly combines them and in conjunction, I mean, with the ESCO classification, in order, first of all, to analyze and identify occupational trends, and what is more interesting in our case, current and emerging skills needs at the national, regional, and local levels. Okay, I cannot stress it enough that fully adopting the ESCO classification system has been a breakthrough in the Greek labor market landscape. It has helped immensely in such procedures as job seeker, but also job profiling, and in skills related information and analysis and so on. So as I said, while it's the full integration of this skills analysis tool is still underway as far as the design of ALMPs and generally PES services are concerned, it is a fact that this skills analysis tool has already oriented Greek policy making in general toward more evidence-based planning, which has been very important to us. So next slide, please. Now, a key step toward integrating LMSI and forecasts into the work of the Greek Public Employment Service was the fact that all the PES employment counselors have received specialist training in the use of the mechanism provided, the analysis provided by the mechanism of labor market diagnosis skills analysis tool. And obviously this was aimed at enhancing their counseling work and support services for both job seekers and employers. As stated, the whole system's integration is gradually developing and has not yet become mandatory for all PES staff. And this means that our approach currently allows our counselors some discretion in using the forecasts and the analysis provided by the mechanism, based, of course, on the various and specific client needs. It is very important that the staff of the Becky unit have introduced a more user-friendly interface to the mechanism skills analysis tool, which provides more simplified analysis, more regional or local insights into labor markets, but also various degrees, various levels of analytical detail. As previously pointed out by Ben, and I can also repeat that, a key lesson that we've learned in the whole process is that user-friendliness and usability of LMSI and skills-related forecasts are absolutely essential in order to ensure, for example, within the strict context of the PES, to ensure its adoption by employment counselors who are in daily contact with job seekers and employers and advise them for current and future needs in skills. But obviously, this need is also shared by all those, all users who are actually or potentially interested in understanding and putting these such forecasts to use. Another key finding is related to the fact that the mechanism's skills analysis tool has contributed to better understanding and promoting the conceptual framework of skills for labor market purposes. I do believe that I'm not speaking on behalf of the Greek national context only. I do believe that around Europe, job seekers, not all job seekers and not all employers are currently familiar with the very concept of skills, right? So what we have found is that thanks to using such a clear classifications of skills and occupations like the one offered by ESCO, which in our case is further refined by the mechanisms skills analysis tool and further validated by surveys that the MECI unit conducts with on a face-to-face basis or on a sectoral basis with employers. Okay, employers are becoming more inclined to be interested in skills, to understanding what skills are, and thus analyzing their own needs in terms of skills, either technical or otherwise. Okay, it's. I'm going to finish with this, with just this comment that it's actually being established that promoting the concept of skills among all stakeholders in the labor market is actually the foundation for the effective use of skills intelligence. And without this foundational understanding, all the tools and insights derived from skills intelligence are unlikely to be used to their full potential, and in some cases are unlikely to be understood at all. I believe that we can return to this issue later on. Now I'd like to pass the floor on to my colleague and senior expert in the development and operation of the mechanism of labor market diagnosis and its skills analysis tool, who also cooperates with the Labour Ministry's MECI unit that runs the mechanism, Mr. Vaios Kotsios. So we can proceed with the slides. And Vaios, the floor is yours for a quick overview of the structure and the actual way of conducting and simplifying information of skills forecasts in Greece.
Thank you, Mr. Prodimitriou. After Mr. Prodimitriou's presentations, I would like to delve into the technical aspect of how we tackle the issue of skill forecasting in Greece. It is a fact that there is a major problem. When someone tries to gather the skills that business need for their personnel, the companies, in many cases, they cannot clearly state what they really require from their employees, especially when it comes to detailed technical skills. For this reason, in Greece, by utilizing the very important tool developed by the European Commission, ESCO, we follow the following procedure. We connect ESCO with the real-time administrative data of Greek labor market, the labor force survey, the unemployment registry, and the vacancies collected by DIPA. This was a quite difficult exercise due to the different coding systems involved. Nevertheless, after this work, it became possible for us to link the European Skills, Competence and Qualification Framework with the mechanism of the Greek labor market. As a result, you can see here, we created the tool that allow us to monitor skill mobility in Greece in real time through big data analysis. As you can see in the specific bubble chart, the y-axis are the new job openings, and the x-axis are the salaries, the wages. And each cycle represents a skill. The size of the bubble corresponds to the number of employees who need the particular skill. This analysis can be applied to any skill level, for every gender, to age, for sector, to 1, 2, 3, 4-digit analysis, NASA FDO, for every region and every municipality of the country. But this is only the model. To further pilot the model and ensure its functionality, we followed the procedure below. First, we select a sector. This sector was the information communication sector, which includes IT companies, while its skills involve at a very rapid pace. This sector encompasses approximately 4,500 skills, not only knowledge, skills only. As someone can see in the bubble chart, center skills stand out from the others, which identifies their market demand in right now situation. In order to evaluate the need for these skills, we conduct empirical surveys to companies. Especially here, we have a surveys with big companies like Google, Hireaway, and other big Microsoft, and we have discussions. We ask them to rate the importance for their business of the model delivered skills we present to them on a scale from 0, not necessary, to 10, absolute necessary, now and the next 5 years. As you can see here, the high skilled jobs, we have an evaluation for skills 9.24 to 10. And they add only 2 skills, agile methodologies and risk analysis. So, as you can understand, this is a very good result for us to see that the model works. We continue this exercise with another sector in Greece. This sector was the pharmaceutical and cosmetic sector. We identified the skills and we asked the companies to evaluate them. And in this case, we separate skills in different categories. Different skills for high-skilled jobs for research and development, different skills for control and testing, different skills for production. You can see the evaluation of the employers here, 9.19, 8.87, and 8.98. So this demonstrates that the development of a robust tool capable of substantiating the national skill discourse. And this tool, it's a part of the Greek skill strategy and describes, and many people becomes from this tool. Thank you, and Mr. Boyano.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much to both of you for that presentation. Eamon, if you agree, I would like to take straight away, I think, the next presentation from the Swedish PES, and then we'll see maybe there's questions. I see there's not. I mean, there's a comment in the Q&A. People very much agreeing with something that Yanis said at the beginning about how skills awareness is at the core of the process. But maybe let's make sure that we have time to hear effectively from the Swedish PES. We're delighted that we're joined now by Sofia Törnicke, who works as an analyst at the Swedish Public Employment Service. And here we've just heard from the Greek PES about medium term. This is now in the spotlight, short and medium term skills forecasting from Sweden. So Sofia, if I can pass the floor to you to hear about what you've been doing in Sweden. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So first of all, for full disclosure, I want to start off by saying that the model for, we actually call it current assessment. We try to assess the current situation in an occupation, but I guess it could also be called short-term forecasting. But that part of the model, we have actually, we have been very inspired by how they do it in Denmark, and we've had good help from the Danish colleagues in developing that model. Me and my colleagues, we are very positive of inter-country learning. So it feels good to be able to present here, because we have learned from them, but we have also adapted the model to the Swedish situation in terms of data access and just the needs that or what we want to focus on and so forth. But we can go to the next. What we did, this model we developed it in a couple of years back because we had to abandon the previous model we had, and then before we started, we did a stakeholder analysis, and it became clear that we had 2 types of main stakeholders. which had similar but not the exactly same needs, and we needed to communicate with them in a bit different ways. So first we have the students, the study and career counselors, the unemployed, etc., who are interested in knowing the job opportunities in different occupations and different in the occupation on a regional level and so forth. So in the model, when we communicate with them, we talk about job opportunities. So this corresponds to the left part of the figure here, where we have 3 different categories for the job opportunities. And basically, I will get back to the data we use to assess this, but basically if our employer survey shows that the employers have experienced recruitment challenges, we say that there are large job opportunities. If there are not recruitment challenges, we look at the unemployment level and the turnover level in the occupations to assess whether the job opportunities are medium or small. But then we also have the other stakeholders, the policymakers, our colleagues in the educational sector who work with education planning and sizing and so forth. And to them, we communicate more in the language of shortage, surplus labor, etc. So this was something, and this is part of the Danish model, and it was something that we found very attractive because it was clear. It sort of provided the opportunity to have these 2 different perspectives for the different needs. So when it comes to the policy use, we also look at some extra measurements or variables. So if the employers experience recruitment challenges, we say that it is a shortage of labor only if we don't see what we call a potential supply of labor, which can be a high unemployment rate, a high share of part-time workers within the occupation, a high attrition rate, so a high rate of people leaving the occupation, or several of these problems simultaneously. And this is these measurements we have come up with because they actually describe quite known specific matching problems within the Swedish labor market, and probably in other European countries you have the same situation. So at the moment the unemployment rate is quite high in Sweden, but we have still very also experience quite severe recruitment challenges. So this is a specific type of matching problem. Also, part-time work is, of course, very common in the healthcare sector, where we also have severe recruitment challenges. So it's a way of highlighting where there is actually a supply of labor that is not being utilized in the labor markets. We can go to the next slide. So here I just want to say something about the data sources. So we use in the top middle, we have a survey which we send to employers who have tried to recruit. And we ask specifically about a recruitment attempt to a specific occupation, and we want to know if they managed to fill the position or not. And from this survey, we calculate the share of unsuccessful recruitment attempts per occupation and region. So this is the base, and then we add these other data sources. In the left bottom, we have the unemployment rate per occupation, which is calculated from the PES register statistics. And then we have the 3 other measurements calculated from the Swedish Bureau Statistic register statistics, which we have access to on a microdata level, so that we can calculate it per occupation and region. So all of these measurements go into classifying the occupations, as was shown in the previous slide. So this is our short-term forecasts, and then we also do a medium-term term forecast, which is also at the moment it is adaptation of forecast done by other agents. So it's basically a translation of industry level forecasts into occupations, and we do it only on the demand side. It shows a 5-year trend for the demand per occupation, and it's also regional. Yes, this is updated twice a year, and we call it the occupational barometer. So it's this assessment of the short term or current situation, and then we have the trend for the demand on a 5-year horizon. We can go to next slide. Okay, will you please click, because I think they're supposed to be, yeah, you can just you can have just the advantages maybe first then. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so some advantages, because obviously there is, or we have experienced that it is hard to gather good data on occupational level, or all data sources have their disadvantages. The survey, for example, is we have a difficulty and require very good response rates, and the administrative data has a lag. So all data has its pros and cons. So we feel that an advantage here is that we use multiple data sources and try to combine them to get a broad picture, and also not put all trust on too few data sources. So we feel this is an advantage. Also that it provides a framework for to have this dual perspective, to both speak in terms of job opportunities, but also in terms of more policy language. It also helps us highlight and speak more about actually what constitute the actual recruitment challenges in Sweden. So the situation is very different if we see no recruitment challenges but no unemployed, no part-time work, then it's really a shortage. There's no one here to take this job. Or we actually see that there are some internal matching issues that if they were improved, the recruitment situation would also improve. And also, as it is based on online vacancies, the recruitment survey, it can be connected to requested skills within these ads. This is not something that we have done yet. We feel that the data, there are difficulties with this data, but it's something to explore more in the future, we hope. We can go to the challenges. As I said, our biggest concern with our model is that we've had a declining response rate in the employer survey. I think if these kinds of survey could be combined with the actual mandatory official statistics surveys, then this would be good, but it has not been possible in Sweden. Also, since we ask about job ads in the past, sometimes we feel that we have difficulties in actually following or capturing when there are rapid shift in business cycles. And the last one is that our stakeholders, or our users, I think they would like to have the medium-term forecast on both supply and demand side, but this has not been possible at the moment. It also has to do with difficulties in actually defining what the labor supply per occupation is. Is it everyone who has the right education, or is it only the ones who actually want to work in that education? So when you want to extrapolate into the future, this comes with some philosophically and methodological issues. So thank you very much. That was my last slide.
Thank you very much indeed, Sophia. And maybe Eamon, if I hand back to you, maybe I think we can take about 5 minutes, and you can address comments and have reflections with both the Greek and Swedish examples at the same time, if you.
Okay. Thank you. First, we've got a very good question, which I'd like to put perhaps first to Sophia and then perhaps to our colleagues from Greece, really. Obviously, we hope predictions are very accurate. They're never 100%, but perhaps could you in turn tell us what you do to actually assess the accuracy of predictions going forward. So do you test your tools and methodology to review it after a certain time frame and compare what's actually happened with what you predicted at some stage in the past? Perhaps Sophia first, and then Yanis or Vias, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fine. So since our model is still quite new, this is not something that we have been able to do yet, but it's obviously the next step. It also it also comes with, I think, like methodological questions because there is not an obvious. You have to know what you're measuring to be able to, like, what should you compare it to. So this is a discussion that we've had, but I mean, it's really important to somehow try to look at the validity of our assessments and forecasts. So this is a discussion that we have. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. As I was actually posing the question, I was thinking, it sounds so simple, but in practice it's so difficult and so prone with lots of issues. But yeah, perhaps Yanis or Vias, have you also considered this important but difficult aspect in deeper? Thank you.
First of all, I would totally agree with Sophia. I mean, the answer she gave. I mean, it's really hard to follow up in terms of very effectively connecting a job seeker and a job with a skills-related prediction, because it's not a single factor that you're actually going to be looking into. But mainly, I would like to ask my friend Vias to answer how this is, first of all, some kind of validation of the prediction of the forecast offered. So Vias, first of all, you should answer this.
First validation is the focus group of the companies. It's the first level of validation of the need of the skills that we identified. In the second step, which has not never done until now, DIPA, the Greek PES, have very sophisticated tracking tools. So they can monitor the move to the labor market for every beneficiary. In how much he works, in how many employees, which occupation, which sectors, how much money he takes. So when we connect these two analysis tools, I think that we have excellent results.
Thank you very much. And perhaps then time for one more question, hopefully, Ed. Could you perhaps again, first from a Swedish colleague, really, could you tell us what perhaps your two main priorities are for developing your tool going forward? And then perhaps Vias or Yanis could address the same question. So your two particular main priorities for building on the excellent work that you've done so far in both of your organizations.
Yeah, so I think, so one thing that we've just recently finished is that, because we actually have a very good tool for showing our assessments to job seekers and so forth. It's a digital study and career guidance page. But we have not really felt that we've reached out with this policy perspective. So we just finished a report, and we will assess whether this is something that we are going to do regularly. But more methodology-wise, we will we will have to work on the response rate and the actual coverage of the forecast. So we are at the moment looking into whether we can actually combine the survey with complement it with other data. So this is something that we are looking into because we have no. Thank you. Yeah.
No, apologies. Yeah, thank you. No, both very logical kind of future steps, actually. Vias or Jan, would you be able to give us a view about your particular two main development priorities for your excellent tool at the moment? Either of you, please. What's on your agenda? Thank you.
Okay, may I start, and Vias may continue if he has something more specific in mind. So our main aim, not just within the strict framework of the PES, but also in the broader national context. Okay, I'd like to make a wider remark, is that, first of all, in the PES, where the main aim is to inform both our vocational education and training school curricula with such information, but also to promote evidence-based design of ALPs in general. But I'd like to remark that generally in Greece, there is currently, or there has been over the past very few years, a growing recognition that generally utilizing LMSI is a joint responsibility of both the labor market and the education system. So this shared approach is driving current efforts to use LMSI and forecasts not only for, as I said, crafting evidence-based ALMPs, but also for informing education curricula, as in the case of the Vocational Education and Training Institutes of DIPA. And the aim is, of course, clear, to align education and training with future labor market demands and improve both school-to-work and job-to-job transitions. So this is an ongoing effort. Vaios, I don't know if you'd like to
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay, well, thank you. That was a really excellent example, and it shows the great potential from the excellent work you've done so far. I'd like to thank you both for your very informative answers to the questions. And I think, unfortunately, again, time is as ever our
sorry
enemy.
to jump
We need
in.
to hand back to Ed. Thank you.
Thanks, Eamon. Thanks, everybody. I want to pass the floor immediately to our final presenter in this webinar. We're delighted to be joined by Stelina Chatsikristou from CEDEFOP, the European Centre for the Development of Vocational Training. Stelina leads research on job skills and vocational education and training for the green transition and sectoral skills developments, and she'll be presenting this morning about providing insights into CEDEFOP's skills forecast. So please, Stelina, the floor is yours.
Good morning from me as well. Warm thanks again for the invitation. The PES are one of the key stakeholders for CEDEFOP's work and CEDEFOP Skills Intelligence. So we are very glad to have the opportunity to present to you some key insights from our skills forecast. And of course, the whole discussion so far was very informative for me. This is a short presentation. I will share the slides with participants. And of course, if anyone has more questions about how we work and what we do with the forecast or any part of the skills intelligence, please feel free to contact me. In case someone doesn't know us, very quickly, we are an EU agency located in Thessaloniki, Greece, and we support the European Commission and stakeholders in member states in order to support them in selecting and designing efficient and effective VETs and skills policies. So we work in an area, a range of areas relevant to VET and skills. Today, we're going to focus on part of our skills intelligence. And by skills intelligence, I think that Ben very graciously said many of the points that I wanted to say, and I'm very glad that we are on the same page, not surprisingly. We use an array of tools, of quantitative and qualitative information in order to understand the short-term and the long-term developments and trends in jobs and skills. Skills forecast is a crucial part of what we do. It has been running for more than 15 years now, but it's not the only piece of information, source of information that is necessary. It was mentioned earlier that the complexity of the labor market that was always here, but now the pace of change of several megatrends that affects all sectors and occupations, as well as the quite fluid geopolitical environment, really stress the importance of combining different sources of information in order to make sense and in practice support evidence-based policy making. So besides the forecast, we run forecast scenarios. We use online job advertisements analysis, as I shared some information in the chat. But we also benefit significantly from expert networks and groups, as well as surveys. Our forecast provides us with projections up to 2035 currently, but we also have the opportunity to run dedicated scenarios. And these have supported us so far in addressing aspects of key megatrends such as the green transition and the digital transition. And we are currently developing a new scenario that will be launched in 2026. Now, some key insights from the forecast data that you have seen through the country reports that we have shared with you. The megatrends pertain. One of them is that the job market does continue to be more skills intensive. This means that the demand for high qualified occupations will remain until 2035. And what is more important in my view is the graph on the right that suggests that for every 100 job openings up to 2035, about 70 will require people with high qualifications. But please also note the replacement demand, which I will have a dedicated graph on later on, which indicates that growth will in a significant share be driven by those that will leave the labor market, either due to retirement or because of leaving the job or the sector. This means that if one would like to delve into the detailed data for specific sectors, we may see that even sectors where we don't foresee job growth, there will be need for jobs to be filled in due to replacement demand. And this is a very important policy message for all member states, in my view. Not surprisingly, aging continues to shape and will continue to shape the labor markets. We see here that the older employees will continue to grow and will regard as a quite significant share of the labor market. This is an important message for training policies, taking also into consideration that some of these people will also have to make transitions in different sectors or even in different occupations, depending on where they work now. And we know already that this is a challenge, particularly for some regions that, for example, face adverse effects from the green transition. In terms of the sectors here, it's a selection of some of the sectors. You can find, again, all the detailed data in our website. It is important to see, I share here the annual employment growth. So the numbers are smaller than if one sees the overall change, but imagine that this is for every year. So one can imply that the green transition does affect, of course, job growth. We see that electricity, that is definitely one of the key trends in terms of electrification of the green transition, is expected to be translated into job growth, whereas other sectors such as oil and gas and manufacturing fuels, definitely coal, are expected to decline. Again, here, I agree with Ben that, you know, the forecast, the people that model forecasts can do an excellent job, and then very abrupt changes in the geopolitical environment can have an effect. But this, until now, it reflects what we can foresee for 2035. So what about other megatrends? For digitalization, there is no question that it permeates all sectors and occupations, of course, at different intensity and pace. But we can see some sectors that are more on the front line, more affected and more important in terms of the digitalization, and not only that, are expected to grow. So indeed, we can say that digitalization does bring growth in some sectors, but of course, it will lead to, as foreseen in other researches, task replacement in some occupations in other sectors. And let's not forget, of course, the aging factor. It is encouraging, more or less, that we see, for example, some sectors more relevant to human aging, like pharmaceuticals, expected to be growing, as well as human health activities. It is a question, though, again, not to stick on one number, one data point. What does this exactly mean for specific countries or specific even regions and sectors, and how this expected growth will translate in, for example, jobs for nurses, where they are in shortage in most member states, or even for doctors that are also facing challenges. So it's not only the sectoral aspect that we're interested in, but also the occupational one. So going into the occupations, again, it's a selection. The list is longer than that. As you can see, we have grouped them here from in categories that are used in the forecast, the famous taxonomies that were mentioned many times already. So we can see here again the digitalization that pushes forward employment growth, particularly for ICT professionals. The science and engineering professionals, it's quite encompassing occupation. It does have a great relevance to digitalization, but not only. There's also occupations relevant to the green transition under that, and of course the ICT technicians. So we see here how important it is not only to focus on high qualifications, but also for VET qualifications, and keeping in mind the importance of higher VET, it's very strong already in some member states. Health professionals are expected to grow, which can be a relief for some member states, as for the reasons I stated earlier. The same for personal care workers, which is a particularly tricky occupation when one tries to do analysis, because several of these people work in the let's say black markets. The job openings are not registered online, but it's very crucial occupation, particularly in terms of taking care of the elder that are going to increase in numbers. So going back to terminology I used at the beginning regarding job openings, you can see here that typically highly qualified occupations are expected to have more job openings, as you see with associate professionals and professionals, and these are people across the economy. The effect of the digital transition, in my view, is again evident with high levels of professionals, because all these occupations require usually above basic digital skills. And also the health professionals are quite high in the list. But replacement demand, that, as stressed earlier, changes many times the narrative that is important for policymakers and any decision maker in the field, highlights that there are going to be high replacement demands for these professionals. So it is not necessarily job growth, net change that we will see in the number of jobs, but it will be people that will retire, people that will choose to change occupations, etc. And replacement demands in several occupations that require even lower qualifications will also be the driving force. So it is an aspect that needs to be tended across the board in terms of qualifications. So thank you very much. And just before closing, to stress that, again, this data can be useful, and I hope they are, but it's always very important that the results at EU level and then by country or by sector, by occupation, are discussed at the local level. So what we do definitely cannot and should not replace any effort at country, regional, local level, because it is the local needs that matter, and are the local stakeholders, such as the PES, that can translate the data into necessary and actionable policy activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Stelina. Eamon, maybe just, time for one follow-up question if you want to pick up on something for Stelina before we close.
Perhaps one, maybe, hopefully, good summary question to close on, actually. Thank you, Stelina, for that fascinating kind of feedback. If you had to pick one absolutely mega trend that was going to have the biggest impacts on the labour market going forward, very difficult, but if you just had to pick one, what do you think it might be? And appreciate that's a very difficult question, but you had to pick just one.
Yeah, I cannot answer as Cedefop. I can answer as
no,
Stelina
sorry,
personally.
Not, no, but from
so
your
don't quote
personal
Cedefop on that.
Yeah.
I think I will betray my green role in the agency, and I will pick aging. I know digitalization and AI are more fancy, and definitely it's sweeping across, but I think that the demographic challenge is hugely important, because it touches upon areas that are even taboos in countries such as pension schemes. It touches upon the way that we engage or not effectively with the younger cohorts. That's, I mean, the younger people now in the labor markets have faced quite a tumultuous last decade, and they seem to have different values and approaches to what is work, and different work ethics than the better ones, if I may say, than my generation. And at the same time, we enjoy, you know, our families and friends getting older and hoping ourselves getting older, but at the same time there are so many aspects that they need to be touched upon from the employment and training aspect. Besides the sectors that we can already see that are going to be fueled by replacement demand, Ben is the expert here that will correct me if I say this is all driven by retirement. It's not, I know, but a significant part of it is. It's also a policy area that will and already does affect decisions regarding migration, regarding early childhood, let's say education, linked to the need to possibly drive more females into the labor market. It's also linked to the personal care workers and the quite black hole, if I may say.
I'm going to have to jump in, Celine, I'm afraid, because the time is again, the clock is always against us, and we've ticked over to 11:30. So I need to just I want to thank all of the speakers, and indeed Eamon. It's a pleasure again working with you on this webinar, Eamon. So thank you to all the speakers for your inputs and for taking the questions. Thanks to all the participants. Just before we close, just a quick reminder to participants to please download and read the thematic paper that was at the heart of Ben's presentation at the beginning on skills and labour market intelligence. There's a link to that in the chat. You can also just go onto the PES Knowledge Centre. There will be a short flash report about this webinar, and the recording will also be uploaded onto the PES Network YouTube channel, so you can go back and listen again if there's any aspect of any of the presentations that you just want to go back and check if you understood correctly. And then please let's keep the conversations going. I know there were questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, but through the network, through the LinkedIn group, we encourage people to be active on LinkedIn, reaching out to each other, carrying on these conversations. We can't cover everything in 1.5 hours, unfortunately, but we can trigger future conversations. Just in terms of a couple of upcoming activities that we'd like you to be aware of. There's going to be another webinar in the autumn on PES support to the green transition. So look out for details on that. And then there is a thematic review workshop on skills-based approaches in PES processes and activities, which is going to be 16th to the 17th of September. That event is for members of the PES network only, whereas the webinar is open to a wider audience. So just be aware that the thematic review workshop is members only for the network. So just thanks again to all our speakers. Thanks everyone for joining us. We had more than 200 people with us this morning, so that was really great to see the interest. Please do take a moment to fill out the feedback form. You can see the QR code there to fill that out. That will remain open after we've closed the webinar. And enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great summer. Hopefully it won't always be quite as hot as it has been for the past few days, but still a nice time for people to take a break from all the hard work that everyone's been doing. And we look forward to seeing people at the next PES Network event. So take care for now, and that's goodbye for the moment. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.